Throwaway account because I find this embarrassing to post, but my head is a mess right now and I need some assurance that I'm normal. See, I share a very special bond with my younger brother. I'm 25 years old and my brother is 17. Since childhood, we have been incredibly close, and I've always felt this protective, almost maternal instinct towards him. I guess it's safe to say that our main love language is physical touch. Growing up, our family dynamic wasn't always the smoothest. We faced our share of turbulence, especially with our parents. In such an environment, I often found myself thinking of my brother as my responsibility, someone I had to care for and protect when things got rough. Maybe that's why we've maintained such a strong physical connection over the years, even as we've grown older. Thinking back to when we were kids, it was the small things that knitted us together. The way his little eyes would light up when I smiled at him, or the way he'd sneak into my room at night if he had a bad dream and needed comfort. There have been countless moments when he would need a hug or a cuddle, and I'd be right there for him. It's natural to us. Time and again, he'd rely on me emotionally. He would come to me with stories of his day, whether good or bad, looking for someone to just hear him out. I suppose he saw me as a steady pillar amidst the whirlwind of adolescence. And here's the thing, my brother is an adorable kid, not only to me, but to others who know him well. He has this sweet aura about him, which makes it easy to want to protect him from anything hurtful. While our closeness might be unusual to some, to us, it feels perfectly normal and immensely comforting. It's like having a best friend who knows you inside out, yet there's this familial safety net that surrounds you. As the years passed, our interactions remained consistent, if not intensified. Each time I see him, my instincts tell me to hold him close, to let him know that everything will be all right no matter what he's facing. Now, as adulthood ushers in new priorities and distances, I don't get to be physically present as much as when we were living under the same roof. I miss those days sometimes, when life was simpler and the biggest challenge was getting through school or dealing with a spatty disagreement with friends. But despite the rare chances for proximity, whenever we do find the time to be together, it's almost as if no time has passed at all. So yes, we hug, we cuddle, and occasionally, he rests his head on my lap when we're watching movies. To my mind, that's nothing out of the ordinary. It's how we, as siblings, communicate our affection. Much like telling someone, "I'm here for you," without uttering the words. I know the concept of love languages, and for us, physicality is just another language we speak fluently. It's a mutual understanding, a silent contract between us, drafted over years of mutual support and love. To me, giving him a kiss on the cheek is nothing more than a gesture of reassurance and love, a nonverbal promise that I will always stand by him no matter how challenging life may become. In sum, my connection with my brother has shaped much of who I am. It's a bond built on years of shared experiences and mutual empathy. In this world, where emotional connections can often be scarce or superficial, I find immense solace and strength in our relationship. And while I understand it may look different to those who do not share such bonds with their siblings, for us, it's genuine and deeply rooted in love, protection, and care. I have always believed that our relationships and bonds defy traditional molds, and in doing so, they become uniquely ours. And truly, there is nothing abnormal about clinging to or cherishing the little things that make us feel like home. Every hug and every word of comfort exchanged between us feels like a warm embrace from the past, reminding us that some connections are unrestrainable by time or distance. All these feelings and memories make me question whether my relationship with my brother is odd or if there are others out there who share similar bonds. I guess, in the end, I'm hoping to hear that my affection for him, my way of expressing love, isn't out of the ordinary as it sometimes seems to others on the outside looking in. Because to me, it all makes perfect sense. Now comes my fiancé, the man I've been committed to for 3 years. He's 29 years old, and while our relationship is seasoned with love and understanding, for the most part, there are some areas that remain tricky. He's fully aware of the close connection I have with my brother. We've shared bits and pieces of this topic in our conversations, so I assumed he grasped the essence of why our bond is so significant to me. When I first moved in with him last year, we were still navigating the newfound shared space and figuring out how our individual worlds would mesh as one. One thing that started bothering me, just a tad, was how infrequently I could meet my brother. In earlier times, before we lived together, I'd see my brother far more regularly. It was the same story of hugging, consoling, and being there for him whenever he needed me. But as it goes, life after a major relationship step inevitably shifts the balance a bit. Initially, I didn't think much of the distance from my brother because I believed in the rhythm we established. However, every time we did find a moment to meet and hug right after stepping through the door, my fiancé couldn't resist a passing remark. They were mostly lighthearted comments like, "Whoa there," or "You guys sure are close." These asides often prompted a playful eye roll from me because I had always taken them at face value, thinking he was simply being humorous. In retrospect, those comments seem to resonate a little differently than they used to. Perhaps in my ear, I might now hear undertones of mild discomfort, not things so easily discernible at the time. Still, back then, his light jests slipped into the flow of the evening with such ease that I failed to question them. Our interactions revolved more around laughter and joy rather than serious discussions. Because after all, when someone you love teases gently, doesn't it usually feel like part of the affectionate playbook? It's astonishing how, with the sweep of time, you can look back at shared moments and realize the shades in which they colored your days. It was nothing evident, maybe a slight awkwardness or a look here and there, but I waved them off, dismissing any fleeting thoughts that my relationship with my brother was something to scrutinize. Why would there be compromise or concern when it felt so genuinely platonic and pure? I sometimes wonder about the dynamics set up as a couple, the networks of loyalty, love, and priorities that form between partners. Each relationship has a gap that relationships outside the partnership sometimes illuminate. While at work, I can be attentive and know the nuances of handling a situation. Domestically, I believed everything was understood, functioning like a well-rehearsed play. My devotion to my brother was as much of a part of me as anything else, an artisanship of family bonds that has crafted my identity and emotional intelligence. As our time progressed together, these very bonds that contribute significantly to who I am as a person started becoming apparent sticking points in my fiancé's perspective. The longer we spent entangled in this symbiosis called domestic life, the more apparent it became that our gaps in perspective when it came to family bonds were more pronounced than anticipated. It wasn't until recently that these tiny remarks pecked at a corner of my mind, sparking an unforeseen counsel into questioning the intent behind them. Amidst the roots, I laid lovingly and patiently with my fiancé. The glimpses of his internal discomfort became the thorns snagging my conscience. I wondered, could my love and protection towards my brother have flourished into something oversaturated, something perceived as being excessive by someone who hasn't shared those familial patterns? Any natural gesture of oblivion seemed like an ill fit to me. Yet here I stood, leaning deeper into the realization that our subtly differing perceptions on family connections came to a face-off in more ways than I wanted. And in this contemplation, I took a dive into his love too. Because he, whose words sometimes grazed taps at a window, never fully delved into a breach of our steadfast vow of transparency. Instead, he presented a face of tolerance, possibly waiting to find the right words to broach the subject where our bridges aligned in unity. But that place of solitude where familial threads wove themselves into the fabric of my being rarely had reason to question its balance until now. With him, the person meant to share starlit skies and storms as one. Identifying this took careful musing, like tiptoeing through feelings I was only just beginning to realize might have needed nurturing from different angles. At the same time, they were real, crafted through measurement of genuine love for the siblingship I held dearly. And yet, my narrative, one that seemed straightforward to me, required reassessment to renegotiate how these tender connections fit into my loving partnership and beyond into the family I'd hoped to build with him. But 5 days back, it was my mom's birthday. And it had been 4 long months since I last saw my family in real life, aside from video calls, as we resided in different cities. The prospect of seeing them made me excited. Every occasion when I visited resonated with the warmth of home that never diminished despite the distance. Celebrations like these have always served as a reminder of what it means to belong, surrounded by familiar tales and love knitted together through shared experiences. My fiancé and I were planning to stay overnight and leave the next morning. It was a small party with relatives, an intimate and loving gathering. I could feel the joy in the air as I reconnected with everyone, catching up on stories, laughter bouncing softly around the room. The joyful ambiance surrounded me, embracing me just as I embraced my dear family members, with hugs I had longed to give. As the night went on, my fiancé and I stayed up watching a movie. It was comforting, nestled on the couch, the familiar scenes of my childhood home around us, giving off a calm that felt like a soothing embrace. Moments like these formed the tapestry of what home felt like, merely enhanced by watching a narrative unfold on screen alongside someone I shared a deep affection with. Then came a gentle knock. It was my brother, standing by the doorway with a vulnerable look on his face. He asked if we could talk. My fiancé gave me a side eye. An unspoken conversation floated between us. I nodded, easing from that serene bubble to follow my brother. As we settled in my room, concern etched across his young face, shadows of stress and uncertainty clouding his normally playful eyes. He expressed how much he missed me and spoke about the academic struggles that were weighing heavily on him. The burdens of his studies were immense, despite his remarkable intelligence. School tensions and the unkind nature of his friends at times felt like invisible chains tugging at his spirit, heavy aspects of companionship soon revealing their palpable weight. With each word he uttered, emotions wavered, shifting silently closer to those moments when everything once felt simple and untroubled, times colored only in fleeting moments of happiness. It broke my heart seeing him this way. Naturally, I began to comfort him, hugging him with reassurance that everything would be okay. His tears shed silently spoke volumes of the genuine stress he faced, and I wanted nothing but to cradle him back into comfort, enveloped by the love I wished would ease his pain a little. We lost track of time. In those precious moments, our bond re-solidified in silent understanding and mutual comfort, much like many times before when solace was needed. Only an hour had passed, but it seemed like time had stretched itself into a canvas of tender commonality, cherished with the intent of healing. Then the ambiance shifted as my fiancé walked in, an interruption met with a voice tinged with slight impatience, asking, "Are you guys done?" He sounded upset. A ripple of discomfort rolled through our tranquil bubble, the hint of disapproval echoing softly in the silence that followed his words. Yet I remained steady, absorbing the moment before bidding my brother good night with a gentle kiss on his cheek. I reassured him we could talk more tomorrow, a promise of further comfort if need be. As I returned to join my fiancé, the remnants of familial love still clung to me. Though unbeknownst to me at that point, a part of what was meant to be a joyful reunion began turning into an unraveling thread of misunderstanding. As I stepped back into the room with my fiancé, I could almost sense the storm gathering. His demeanor was tense, and I could feel the charged atmosphere in every strained muscle of his jawline. Without missing a beat, once the door clicked shut behind me, he let loose a tirade that caught me off guard. I hadn't anticipated this. With a sharpness in his voice that I'd never quite heard before, he declared how he found it disturbing and wrong for me to kiss my own brother on the cheek. He threw words like gross into the air, words sharp enough to hang there with uncomfortable weight. It felt like he took a knife cut from his set of assumptions and jabbed them into the quiet sanctity of our familial bond. He went on, cataloging every touch, every moment of skin contact between my brother and me, as if I had committed some grave offense. Hugging, cuddling, resting a weary head on my lap, it was all bundled into this tight ball of perceived impropriety. To me, these gestures spoke a language of affection and love that only family, bound in shared experiences and understanding, could comprehend. Yet, here he was, dissecting and misunderstanding it entirely. The accusations escalated quickly. He hurled insinuations, saying that I somehow prioritized my brother over him. It felt like an icy wave crashing over the shores of my understanding. How could he not see that I loved and cherished him just as much as I did my brother, albeit in different ways? After all, wasn't love supposed to be expansive enough to embrace those we hold dear without diminishing anyone else? With a tone now almost tinged with a hint of jealousy and misunderstanding, he took the audacious step of suggesting that there was something more between my brother and me, a forbidden affair, a love that overstepped its familial boundaries. It was absurd, and the words were arrows aimed to hurt. Trying to unravel his confusion with calm and patience, I attempted to explain, sharing glimpses from my past. I spoke about the tough times, the shared history of having to support one another through childhood trauma, dealt at the harsh hands of an abusive parent. I wanted him to understand that what tied my brother and me together was not just affection, but a shared pact of protection and resilience. Yet, as my words formed, they seemed to hit a wall of misunderstanding so thick, it felt like the tender truth failed to permeate. He didn't want to listen. Instead, his mind seemed set, eyes ablaze with some twisted notion of protectiveness over our relationship. Then, with a dismissive shake of his head, he left. The sudden silence his departure left behind was deafening, the door swinging shut on the tail end of my sentence. The parchment of our argument lay scattered on the floor, unwritten lines turning to dust. And so alone in the echoing silence, I sat, the weight of misconstrued intimacy pressing down on my shoulders. Puzzled by how love meant to heal was becoming a point of unbearable contention. The next day, attempting to process the events of the night had barely started when he made his intentions horribly clear by reaching out to his mother with an alarming declaration. He wanted to end our engagement. Unsure of whether to react with disbelief or sorrow, I found myself in a confusing tangle of emotions. My heart felt heavy, as though shackled by chains of misunderstanding. His mother, whom I had grown quite fond of over time, seemed to sympathize with her son's confusion rather than trying to bridge the gap between his perspective and mine. I decided hesitantly to speak with her myself, hoping that a third party would provide some calm rationale to the storm that was muddling our relationship. During our conversation, she expressed concern, gently suggesting that my closeness with my brother might indeed seem strange from an outsider's perspective, especially for someone without siblings like my fiancé. "It could be affecting him mentally," she voiced, her tone softer yet firm enough to suggest that the balance of my relationship was tipping perilously. It bewildered me how my bond with my brother was being read as anything other than familial. She went on to advise that if my engagement meant anything to me, it might be wise to distance myself from my brother, even if only for the sake of preserving peace within my budding family. Her words, though earnest, felt like a wedge being driven between two halves of my heart. It became painfully clear that they regarded my affection as something unconventional, even as an obstacle that might ruin their envisioned life path. Hearing such words felt like standing in quicksand, my footing uncertain and threatening to pull me under any moment. I listened to her, torn, despite her good intentions. There was a vulnerability revealed in those moments, one that shone through our shared bond as women who cared deeply about a man who was not fully seeing the picture in front of him. Yet, her counsel left me staggered, on the precipice of having to choose between two pillars of my life, while all I wanted was to join them together instead of tearing them apart. With everything swirling around inside my mind, I felt trapped, unable to grasp why I was suddenly at the center of this turmoil. How did my genuine affection for my brother become the catalyst for potential heartbreak? Lost in this emotional labyrinth, I desperately questioned my sanity. I wondered if my natural behavior had indeed been so misguided all along. My fiancé's perception of an otherwise innocent bond troubled me greatly, and the thought of hurting someone I love even unintentionally made my stomach churn. His reaction seemed so disproportionate to what I believed to be normal, leaving me in a state of panic and uncertainty. All I longed for was the harmonious blending of these crucial segments of my life. I love both my fiancé and brother dearly, and couldn't understand why I was now forced into this corner, compelled to reconsider my identity and relationships. That sitting on the edge, feeling, lingering in the space between choosing sides, was something I never anticipated, but had become my unnerving reality. Am I truly blind to a fault they see so clearly?